Hey y'all, it's Sarah here. Today I am bringing you a finishing video. I've had a lot of questions on how I'm finishing out my projects, questions about the frames, on whether or not I was using real wood frames, and I'm going to walk you through that. I've had questions about how the sides look when they're finished, and questions about how the backs look when they're finished. So I'm going to show you a couple things real quick, and I'm going to try to span back here just a little bit so that I can show you guys. So I pulled a couple of my projects and I wanted to show you. This is a finished edge. So this is after the result of whatever my backer board is, my center strips, and then my frame. Now, I've been asked several times how I do the backs. Typically, I recommend to you to use black when you can. That way you don't have anything showing through. You don't have white showing through in between your little strips. If you cannot find black, which I know a lot of people cannot, and you want a finished product, this is option 1. So all I didn't go in real heavy with details. I didn't go super fantastic, but I did finish it out. So the back of it, I just took my sponge, applied my paint, brushed a little of it out, and a few little details so that my back is every bit as finished as my front. We're going to go through some of the framing details. I wanted you to see, I've been asked, did I staple this on? Nope, but we're going to learn how to do this. And I wanted to show you a couple other options on how to finish a piece. So when you use the black, and I left this on so you could see, maybe you can see what the black is listed as, for those of you that can't find it in your stores. So this is what I mean about if you use the black backing, you pretty much don't have to finish anything on the back. You can leave it as is. Now, you still have to finish out your sides. You still want to go through with your sponge and your paint color and hit all of these sides so that you have a nice even finish to your sides of your projects. And then I wanted to show one more option on finishing the back. So I didn't glue this on very straight, but what I've done is I barely painted around just the edge of this, and then I covered it with brown paper, the same way you see a lot of high-end art done from the store. So all this is the roll of brown paper bag kind of material that Dollar Tree carries, cut to size. Like I said, I didn't glue it on super straight. That was kind of on me, but that's another option if you don't want to have to paint out the entire back. If you don't want to use all that paint, just hit your edges, cut it in a little, and you have a finished back and entire piece. So we're going to learn how to do this. This one is the nail holes. So this one looks like it's been nailed. Let me get a little closer. That one looks like it's been nailed together. And I'll show you this one. This one looks like it's been stapled together. So we're going to do both of those, and we're just going to jump straight into working on them. So I've told you before that when I cut my strips, I end up with 6 strips and a weird 2-inch leftover. So basically you end up with all of these, and then this weird leftover 2-inch dude. So I usually cut these down as these are getting cut. This gets cut down to somewhere, my latest that I've kind of stuck with is 1.5 inches. Smaller projects that I want to frame, I'm going to drop down to about 1.25 inches wide. But typically all of these, as these are getting cut, we go ahead and cut these down to the 1.5 inch width so that I have plenty of these to grab when I get ready to frame out and finish a project. So I just kind of wanted to show that, because it does end up an uneven number, but it works out for me because now I have a pretty good stash of framing material. I have a tool that my husband made for me that works great for doing 45-degree angles. I know not everybody is going to have access to something like that. I am going to show the most basic, easy peasy. It couldn't get any easier. It's time consuming, but it's not complicated. And I kind of want to show how to get these nice mitered corners. We're going to do two different options, and then a couple different options on those two options. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use this right here to pretend that this is my project. And I don't know what size this is. This is a scrap from something. So this is straight up 12 inches wide. So I would go ahead and cut my pieces down. So there's two, and I'm going to assume this looks pretty square, but oh, I'm glad I did. They are not actually the same. So I'm just going to cheat here, and I'm going to mark this off. Because most of you know how to at least get your length. So this is slightly different. One is 12 inches. The other side is 11 1/4. So I've got those. I'm going to go ahead and cut these to size. And if you haven't watched the video on how I cut these so straight, you're seeing it right here. I'm taking a straight razor blade. I'm hitting my straight edge well above my material that I plan on cutting, because right here is where you tend to drag the most and where you're most likely to get your jagged edges or your pieces that don't cut loose. So my pressure is good all the way before I ever get to that point. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm being bold. I am doing this without my glasses on. Let me remedy that. So I'm going to cut all my pieces down to fit. When you're doing a full size sheet of foam core, which is 20 by 30, you're literally you're not going to cut those down on the 30-inch length. You're going to want to measure that right tip to tip, since you can't get any longer with the board if it's only 30 inches. So I have these, and they're all should be measured out pretty good. So these are 1.5 inches wide. Right, so we know that that's the width of this. I'm going to come over here to the side and add 1.5 inches. There is a square. To get your 45-degree angle, and you don't have to draw all of this or pencil all of this. I'm doing this so that you guys know what I'm doing. And let me get a little closer here. So that's what I've done. And I'm going to show you that again. And I've got something on my ruler here. So this piece is also 1.5 inches. I'm going to come over. This little section is going to be a perfect square. And I'm going to go corner to corner. You don't have to use a lot of math. There's no Pythagorean theory involved. So you're going to do it to all of your pieces. And I'm going to show you how to do each end. Well, I have these marked. So I'm going to take and line up. Do the same thing. I'm cutting perfectly in those corners. This is where my scraps for my little triangle piece came from. So you want your longest points to be on the same side. So just keep that in mind when you go to do this other side. So there's my 1.5 inch over. And then I want my longest point to be up in this corner. So I'm going to go from corner to corner. I'm a little off on that. And I'm going to turn this at a little different angle so that I can cut it. And you want to try to hit those corners as clean as possible. Okay, so there's your first piece. It's going to look like this. Now you could very easily just do your first piece. Go back in and use it as your template. You'll see. That's typically what I do, is I'll get one template down. Oh, keep in mind though, I've got 2 different lengths on these. So we'll go ahead and cut these out. Oh. Trying to do this without taking off a finger. I've literally got the camera right at eye level. So these should be 2 sides. And all I'm going to do for this, these are different lengths. But just make sure you slide to that very corner. Mark that off. Slide it to your other corner. And if you're worried that you're not lining them up, just kind of make sure you don't bend your corner up, but just kind of flick them across and line them up. Do the same thing to these, but I'm going to lay this down so I can do this a little better. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and nip these off. Hopefully I did that right. I really am struggling to see where I'm at the moment. Watch those little scraps. I'm sure you'll see them again as something else. And this really doesn't go super slow. I just happen to be slightly visually impaired at the moment. And like I said, these little guys, assuming that you're getting them cut at a good angle, these should all match up. You'll have great little pieces for some of the wood quilt looks. So I've got my pieces. I'm going to do a dry fit. I don't remember which side of this was longer. It looks like this way. I wanted to show a quick little tip. If you happen to have pencil marks on your nicer side that you don't want to show up, if your eraser is colored, be very careful. This is very porous and it'll pick up that color, I have found. Try to find a white eraser when you go to erase pencil marks off of this, and you'll save yourself a whole lot of smudging that you would get from some of the color pencil erasers. So I've pretty much got this a dry fit. And now you see why I tape them when I make my patterns, because they slide all over on you. So I'm going to say I've got a pretty good dry fit. I think I've got one little funky cut over here, but let's see if I flip that over, if it changes it. Yes, it does. And this is why, this little spot here is why I said sometimes you have one side that's a nicer side than the other. If you have to erase your pencil marks, save yourself the headache of trying to figure out why it keeps smudging on you. Okay, I'm going to get this out of the way so it doesn't slide. Now that I know where these are going to line up, I'm going to do two sides that are stapled. And I'm going to do two sides that are nailed. So I'm just taking this pencil and I'm popping it in right about where you would think that these would probably be nailed in. There you go. And I don't really need that part now. And on this bottom section, you're just going to take something, and I'll show you. Mine has this little flat, kind of scoopy looking thing. You could very well take maybe something like this. That might be a little too sharp. This end, though, that gives you a wider type little jab. You just go in. Try not to pierce both layers of paper. The less damage that we can do overall, the longer this is going to last. I've been asked how long, how durable, you know, extra ways to make this hold out. This really is a look that is just for looks, y'all. It honestly is. I mean, you have to consider that you are making an art with pretty much just paper. No matter how much it looks like wood, it definitely does not hold up to anything. So the less damage you're doing to it, the less moisture, the less paint, the better off you are. So I'm just taking this other little stabby one. I don't put a lot of knot holes in my frames. Maybe one, maybe two somewhere. And the reason that I don't is because I don't want it, I want it to frame what I'm working on. I don't want it to take away. So my next step is I'm just going to do this in a really basic color scheme. I'm not going to elaborate with this. So I'm going to dip into my Waverly Wax and Antique. And a little of the clear. They're kind of mixed together here now at this point. That gets that pretty good coverage down into that foam. I'm doing all of these at once. There will be a little that seeps through, and we're going to take care of that fairly quickly. So you want to get all four sides of this. With some of your other things, you only have to get like the outer edge. But this is right up front. This is framing out your project. You definitely don't want any white spots showing and ruin the illusion. So this is my damaged side. This is where I did all my little stabs. And I'm going to try to get these lined up pretty good. And let's see if I can hold these fairly well so I can show you. This process is basically the same as doing any of your big strips. Whatever paint color you've chosen to combine, you're going to go in, fill the liquidy part down into these holes that you've created, your staple marks, your nail marks. You don't want too much product sitting on there unblended. Excuse me. You don't want any of the product sitting on your surface too long unblended. It will start to seep in and you'll have a weird pattern of wherever it was sitting there. So my biggest struggle here is fingerprints. So at this point, you can start to see in your spots where your staples, where your faux staples were, your faux nail holes were, you definitely want to get those filled in. You want to get that color pigment down in there. It almost makes it feel like that nail is still in there, that staple is still in there. And I'm going to blend some of this out here. So you can see there, I've left this fairly light so that those really pop out at you. Now, I'm just going to go in, for this particular paint technique, I'm just going to go in and dry brush a little paint on here to darken this up so you can kind of see those stand out. And the technique, the paint technique right now that's really up to you. It depends on which of the other videos you're following to get your paint look. You would use that same technique to get the color you wanted for your frame. But your focus definitely wants to be on those little extra touches, like the nail holes, like the staples. You don't have to put those there. If you're doing something that's a little more formal and you wouldn't want it to be a piece of art that was stapled together, by all means, skip this part. I just like this extra detail. So I want you to see what these look like. This is as dark as I'm going to go on this. I've gotten it dark enough, I believe, that it shows up for you guys. So here's what we've got with the stapled look. Here's what we've got with the nailed. Now, you could very easily just have had one nail in each spot, one staple in each spot, and you would be fine. Once you're ready, once these are dry, I don't want to put too much on here. I know it's going to transfer paint. But you would just line these up to where your dry fit worked. Sorry. You would actually go ahead and do your backside. You don't have to do the entire thing. But you do not want this white showing through on the layers. And it will from certain directions. So just drag your sponge. It doesn't even have to be perfect. Just something other than stark white. These are so narrow you end up doing the whole thing. Otherwise, you could just do down the side like this. Down the side like this. Just get those edges. So that when these things stack, let me show. When these things stack, if you happen to have one that has that white edge, or it's not completely stacked, you're going to see that. If these weren't in perfect alignment, you don't see any white. So I like to have these edges done. It gives you so much cleaner of a product at the end. And these can all sit and dry, and I'm going to show you the next type of frame we can do. And I'm going to use this same little board, same measurements. And I'm just going to put these out of the way so they can dry. Okay, let me clean my hands off briefly before I touch anything white. So we're going to grab these two, and this is a more basic frame, and I've only done this on my more rustic ones. And that was kind of before I figured out how to do the mitering. So, but this is still a legit option. And it kind of has its own look. So I'm just going to use this method to measure it out. I'm just going to mark out. Same thing we did with the other. You kind of know, you need to know what lengths you're working with. So I'm going to get these, let me get these two cut first. And that makes it easier to get your measurements for the others. I could have done it that way. I kind of like showing the easiest peasiest method of getting to things when I can. So I believe that one at the top. Yep. So here we are. Got my top and bottom section. I know where those are going to line up. Let me slide this out of my way for a second so I can get this where you guys can see. And I'm just going to take my other one and we're going to figure out right in between here what we're looking at space-wise. Hopefully I've got those. Nope. That little end is wanting to slide on me. In this one, you don't have to do anything other than cut the lengths. But we're still going to apply the same extra details. I'm still going to show you how to get the staples. Okay, I'm going to figure out where these are going to lay out. Make sure they work. Remember your frame size that you're planning on using as you're making your project, because when you go to finish it, it's nothing worse than going to put a frame on it and realizing that your frame is going to cover up part of your design. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll put some nail holes in this one. This side, I'm only going to put a singular nail hole. Same thing with my fake staples. And we're just going to do the same thing. We'll see how this results. I just wanted to give several options so that you're getting a full finished piece. I know I don't always finish a piece on a video because I get too involved in the painting. But I wanted to address how I'm finishing them out, how I want the whole piece to look like a quality piece, even though it's foam core. I still finish the entire thing out like it's a nice quality piece, and it just adds to the illusion. It's definitely worth the effort, in my opinion. I'm not opposed to halfway through in certain things. I just kind of enjoy the process of this. So I'm not going to paint this whole thing. I just kind of want them to show up enough where you can see some ideas on how to, I guess, embellish your frame. Okay, let's see if I can show you a few spots here. So I didn't blend that very good, but you'd be able to line it up there. Those were meant to go in alignment here. I wanted to show you if you just do your single nail hole, that works just fine. Doing the double works just fine. If you're going with a more narrow frame, I definitely would just try the single. But this just little bit of detail, you can see, oops, wrong way. It just really adds to it. So I hope that helps some of you guys figure out some ways to finish up your items once you've gotten them completed. Always go back in, use whatever paint is left on your sponge. By the time you've got everything glued down and finished, take one last round on your piece, using whatever is left in your sponge before you go to put your sponge up, and hit that edge one more time. Hit those edges one more time just to blend all of that in, because that foam takes it. When you're hitting the foam, it takes the paint differently in different spots. It helps clean off your sponge. It makes sure that your piece is finished out. And there you guys go. A piece that looks like it's entirely finished out. I hope those tips help. I hope that it gets you to where you're feeling confident and creating a project from beginning to end. And if you do, be sure to check out the Peppermint Cactus group on Facebook. There are so many people posting their results, and I'm absolutely amazed how far people are going with it. There's entire walls being done. I know some people are getting started on headboards, which is amazing, because the headboards that I have seen in this particular pattern, like the headboards this style, can run $1,000. So if you could knock one out, and assuming that it's just there for looks, it's not getting hit or bumped on a regular basis by your bed frame or anything, I don't see why this wouldn't work decent for a headboard. Come and check out what these ladies are doing and what projects they're knocking out. Share a few of your own. I hope to see some of you guys there, and thanks for watching along with me. Bye.